and healthier right now. Not next week, not next month, next year. How to be stronger and healthier right now. Now, many of you watching this presentation tonight, you are already enrolled in the MedFitness program, so you are strength training with us, and you've noticed that you have gotten stronger and you're healthier, and you've seen that on your progress reports. So we need to begin by just answering a question, which is, why worry about getting even stronger and healthier if in fact you're already enrolled in the MedFitness program? And so two very good reasons why we should continue to keep our eyes on our strength and our health. And we're talking about muscle as well in just 2 seconds. But reason number one is a book that was published in 1991 by Dr. Bill Evans. Dr. Evans at that time was the chief of the Human Physiology Lab at Tufts University. He had been doing strength training research in the 80s, published this book in 1991, and the title, of course, is Biomarkers, 10 Keys to Prolonging Vitality. So what Dr. Evans essentially did in his book is he identified determinants, which he calls biomarkers, that predict whether or not you're going to live a longer and healthier life. And so some of the things that you might expect to see on that list are there, like body composition, bone mineral density. Those are of course important. But two big surprises for 1991, and even two surprises for people today, is the fact that the number one biomarker in this book, the number one predictor of living a healthier, longer life, is muscle mass. Number two is strength. So we're going to drill down on these tonight, but this was in 1991, 28 years ago. We've had a mountain of research since then reinforcing those as important determinants of living longer and living better. So this was 1991. Now, the second reason why we want to pay attention to our strength and health, even though we're already strength training, is a study that was published in 2014 in the American Journal of Medicine. This was a study that looked at the relationship between muscle mass and mortality rates, and they found an inverse relationship here in adults that were aging. In other words, as muscle mass went up, mortality rates dropped. And so I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and Dr. James Fisher was reviewing this data, and he came up with a soundbite that was very accurate. I just love what he said. He pointed out that it's hard to kill strong people. What a clear, succinct, to the point way to look at this inverse relationship between muscle and mortality. Muscle goes up, mortality goes down. So for these two reasons, I'm going to argue that even if you are strength training right now, it still is very, very beneficial to be focused on your strength as a way of protecting your health as you're aging. Now, having said that, we have 3 action steps tonight. How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to achieve a stronger, healthier body so quickly and efficiently? We have 3 action steps. Those 3 action steps are up on our board here. We're going to talk about supervision and why that is even more important than we've thought in the past. Number 2 is we're going to talk about this thing that you've heard me talk about before, which is muscle failure, and why that is the ideal dose of medicine to make your body stronger. Again, some people may be surprised by that. And lastly, we'll talk about something that almost nobody talks about, which is the central nervous system. It's highly correlated to your muscular system, and it's an important ingredient when we consider how and why can we get stronger from a strength workout. So let's start with number 1. Recommendation number 1 for being stronger and healthier, and in fact, let me put one footnote to that. When I say be stronger, be healthier, it's again to add quality years to your life. We're not talking about saying, let's live 10 years longer, but have those years be substantially worse. Nobody says that. Everybody wants quality years. So we're talking about adding quality years to your life by adopting these practices. So step number 1 is to be supervised when you're strength training. Now this seems almost too obvious. Most of you are already supervised, but there's two important insights that scientists have discovered about supervision that we should be aware of even when we're exercising in a supervised strength program like the one here at MEDFITNESS. Number one is that it is simply easier to not work out when you're not being supervised. I don't think anyone will argue this. If you are not seeing your trainer and you're not checking in and you're not getting coaching and you're not getting feedback, it's easier to skip workouts. We see this all the time with our clients. If they're traveling or out of town or in a different state for the winter and they're just gone, we see the vast majority have a hard time getting started with and sticking with a strength training program, despite the fact that we're giving them resources and encouraging them and so on and seeing them when they get back. So point number one about supervision, it is easier to not work out when you're not being supervised. So that's the first thing we should be aware of when we are being supervised, because you're typically compliant. We have incredibly high compliance rates here with weekly workouts at MEDFITNESS. And so being in that highly supportive environment, you might not be thinking, well, gee, if I tried to work out on my own, I probably wouldn't do it. That's really what we see on a very consistent basis. So supervision matters in terms of weekly consistency with strength workouts. The other one is an almost bigger insight that was revealed last year in a study published in the Journal of Biomed Research International. This was a very interesting study. What these scientists did is they took, again, adults who hadn't been strength training, put them through 6 months of rigorous one-on-one personal training focused on strength workouts, trained them for 6 months, saw improvements in body composition, saw all kinds of functional strength improvements, really got great gains in 6 months, and then gave the group one of two options. They said, group one, we're gonna suggest you keep strength training. Group two, just go do nothing. So they could either keep strength training on their own, unsupervised. This was comparing supervision to not being supervised. So imagine you had a trainer for 6 months and then you were told, Richard, go train on your own. You said, okay, I know how to do it. I've been with my trainer. I'll go apply that to my own workouts at the gym. This was a shocking result. 6 months after that, which is a 1 year later, when they compared the results that the people who were strength training achieved to those who were just doing nothing, you would guess that those who strength trained continued to gain benefits. That's what we would think, and that's what many people would have guessed. In this study, what was surprising is that the people that kept strength training got the same results as people who did absolutely nothing. So you could go home, sit on a couch, do nothing, don't strength train for 6 months, and then have your peers strength training on their own, unsupervised for 6 months. You basically got the same results. This was a huge surprise. But when we drill down on it and look at what these scientists felt about these outcomes, they're consistent with what most of the industry would suggest if you have people who are strength training on their own in an unsupervised environment. What they basically concluded is that when people aren't being coached, supervised, guided the way they are in a structured program like we have here at MEDFITNESS, they just don't work as hard. And remember, we're going to talk more about this in 2 seconds, but remember, when you think about strength training, the single most important factor determining the benefits you get is how hard you work. So what happens? You're not with your trainer, you're just not pushing yourself to the same threshold that you would if you're just training, or I'm sorry, you're on your own and you're not pushing yourself the way you would with your trainer. So this is a surprise, but it does make sense. And so at the end of the day, for everyone who's being supervised right now, your job is to stay in that supervision system. If you're not getting coaching and supervision, I would strongly recommend that you get into a supervised environment based on the evidence that we have from this study and based on common sense as well in terms